Welcome to Love and Abuse, the show about helping you identify poisonous communication and toxic behavior. You deserve to be treated with respect and kindness. That's why it's important that you learn to pinpoint manipulative and controlling behavior so that you keep your power and your sanity. I'm your host, Paul Coliani. Welcome back to Love and Abuse. If you are a new listener, then welcome to Love and Abuse. I am glad that you are here. And for those of you who are subscribed to this show, you haven't heard me in a while. You haven't heard me in almost a month. I apologize about that. Most of you know I have two podcasts, The Overwhelmed Brain and this one, Love and Abuse. And if you are following me over there, you'll hear me every week. I don't talk about emotional abuse as much, but there are actually many episodes where I've talked about emotional abuse, and I'll be sharing those episodes on this feed very soon. I'll be sharing some of those. I'll be breaking some of the episodes down where I talk specifically about emotional abuse and difficult relationships and other things like control and manipulation and deception and lying and all that stuff too that you may have to deal with in your life, or you may be dealing with in your life, and that might be helpful to you. So if you're subscribed to this podcast, you will hear those, or you can also look or listen to the backlog of episodes that I have over at theoverwhelmedbrain.com. But I'm glad to be here. Let me just throw you my disclaimer. All the information on this show is meant for educational purposes only. Always seek a professional for your mental health and well-being, and always pick your battles wisely. I don't even like calling them battles. Why does it have to be a battle? You shouldn't just get into a relationship and then experience difficulty from that point on. Typically, hurtful people will start off nice, but then they will become hurtful. So after a few months, that's what typically happens in romantic relationships. If it's family or someone else you know in your life that is being hurtful in any way, emotionally abusive, controlling, manipulative, or just plain mean, they can show up that way your whole life sometimes, especially family. Family can show up that way your whole life, and you don't know them any other way. And unfortunately, they don't know you any other way. They know you as the person who has received this behavior and hasn't done anything drastic enough to change it or change your response to it or say something about it that stops it. Maybe you've tried, maybe you've said things, maybe you've lost relationships because of it. Maybe you have stood up and said, no, I can't accept that behavior. It's hurtful, it's disrespectful, and I won't allow it in my life. And if you've done that and you've lost the relationship, that might be a casualty of standing up for yourself. That might be what you have to do to make life a little easier to live, or to be around certain people, or maybe not be around certain people, is to stand up and say something. This is one of those pick your battles wisely, because sometimes you pick battles with people that will go to the ends of the earth to hurt you. Those are the people that triangulate, which means they pit other people against you. They get your friends against you, your family against you, and they will tell them lies about you, and they'll be convincing. And the friends and the family that don't actually talk to you to get your side of it will believe them, and you will be singled out. You will be isolated. You will feel alone because of triangulation. So they'll do that. They'll also run a smear campaign against you. A smear campaign is where they just spread lies about you. It's like putting up posters on telephone poles saying, this person is evil. This person took my kids away. This person destroyed our relationship. This person cheated. This person lied. I'm not saying that it literally happens that way, but you understand what I'm saying. This is the smear campaign that smears your good name, your reputation, so that other people look down on you and support the person doing it to you. It's a really I want to swear right now. It's a really crappy thing. It's a really terrible thing. And if you're going through it or have gone through it, A, you know what I mean, and B, you know it's very difficult emotionally to get through it. So they'll do that. They'll do the triangulation, the smearing, and the isolation is part of the triangulation as well. And these are all emotional abuse terms if you've never heard them. I'm not just making these up. These are actual terms that people who have studied emotional abuse or who've been through emotional abuse have created so that they can tell others about it and describe it in writings and videos and educational materials. So you have the triangulation, you have the smearing, the isolation I was just mentioning. When there's triangulation, when somebody turns other people against you, you can feel very alone. And that is the feeling of isolation. But isolation often comes in the form of being away from friends and family that support you. So you might move with somebody that is hurtful, that is emotionally abusive, and they move you away from your support system, your support structure that is there for you, that will guide you to make good decisions, that are there to bounce things off of. If you don't have that support system in place and they took you away from that, then they have more control, they have more ability to have power over you. And that's often called a power over model. They have power over you, so they are in a powerful position to control you, to dominate you, to make you feel like you have fewer options, to make you feel like you're out of control. And the more you feel like you're out of control and the fewer options you think you have, the more likely you're going to try to seek the good out of the person that's being bad. And what I mean by that is someone can mistreat you, and you may know you're being disrespected and hurt in many ways, or not, you may not know, but you may know something is wrong, like you can't ever satisfy them, they're never happy, they blame you for everything. When that happens, when you are in that space and you're isolated, having no access to friends or a support system, except maybe a phone call, but really no place to go, you're more likely to search for and dig deep to find the good in the person you're with. Because if you can't find the good, then you have to succumb to the fact that everything about this situation is terrible and there's nothing redeeming about it, and it makes life miserable. This isn't true always. This isn't true in every case. Some people are good underneath and do bad behaviors. That is absolutely true. Some people are good underneath and still do bad behaviors. And then there are some people that do not have your best interest in mind. And that's why they isolate, and that's why they triangulate, and that's why they put you down and make you feel bad and make you feel guilty. When you're around people like that, who have also taken you away from your support system and your friends and your family, or isolated you from them, then you're more likely to try to see the good in the person that did that to you, just to have some sort of redeeming value left in the relationship. And also, because you have no support system, seek support from them. And this puts you in a very binding situation where the person that is being hurtful is the very person you're trying to seek support from. Because if you can get support, then you feel loved, you feel worthy, you feel important, you feel valued, you feel all these wonderful things by getting this support. But since you can't get that support from someone else, you try to seek it from the person doing the harm. And I know this is difficult for some people. This is very difficult for someone who is isolated and they just want to find any type of support they can, or any type of feeling of love and connection, or at least feeling liked by the person they're with. And when they can't get it, this is why I'm saying this, is that if you find yourself constantly looking for the good in someone who keeps treating you badly, that could be the reason why, or at least one of the reasons. You could be trying to seek the good in them because you can't get that good from people around you because they're not around you anymore. So if you've been isolated and you're feeling lonely and you're feeling unloved, you're going to seek that from that person. At the same time, you also try to seek goodness and support and love and caring and even compassion from hurtful people because you once saw it or you once believed you saw it. And that's where I go back to the first few months of the relationship, is when those people are typically the kindest, nicest, most compassionate, most caring person in your life. And that's why you got so hooked. Again, I'm talking about romantic relationships because in family, they've known you all your life, so it doesn't really start off like that as a relationship. But in romantic relationships, that's what can happen. If you get into a romantic situation with a hurtful person, an emotionally abusive person, a narcissist even, someone who has no empathy and has an agenda to control you and keep you under that control for the rest of the relationship, which they hope is forever because they want to be able to do whatever they want to do, regardless of how you feel about it, because they simply don't care. Unfortunately, narcissists simply don't care how you feel. They only care what happens to them and how they feel. And if you're showing up in their life in the right way, the way they want, then they're happy. And they might show you what seems to be caring and love, but it's often an agenda. I don't typically get into the depth of narcissism in this show, but narcissism is a very difficult condition to deal with in someone. So if you're with a full-blown narcissist, it is a very hard situation to deal with because in their life, you only matter to them as a supply to fulfill a want or need. You don't matter to them as somebody they actually care about. The narcissist will care about a person as far as that person is compliant. Again, that's a deeper subject. I might get into it another day, but if you're with a full-blown narcissist, you'll probably know it because they will not care if you're crying. They will not care if you are upset that they cheated on you or lied to you. They won't care. It won't matter to them. Now, they may act like they care, but then they'll do behavior that shows they don't care. They just go right back to it. It's like you don't matter. You are an object to them, something that can be used and abused and put away whenever they don't need you. So like I said, narcissism is a very difficult condition to deal with. And if you're in a relationship with a narcissist, my heart goes out to you, and I wish you much strength and healing so you can get to the point where you can make strong decisions for yourself and for your family if you have a family with a narcissist. And I wish you much strength through that process because that is difficult. Them and sociopaths are very difficult. There's a slight difference between them both. But antisocial personality disorder is another condition. They used to be called sociopathic. But coming back to getting into a relationship, if you get into a romantic relationship with an emotionally abusive person, what ends up happening is that they will typically show up as the kindest, most compassionate, most amazing person at first. And then over the months, when they start to get more comfortable around you and be themselves, and they realize that you're in it probably for the long haul, that's when they let this other person out. And this other person is the one that really wants what they want and will do anything to get what they want, whether covertly or overtly, meaning they might be more passive-aggressive and not as directly hurtful. There are those. And then there's the overt ones, which are very active-aggressive, maybe insulting, offensive, and what might seem harder to be around than the covert ones. And sometimes they are, and sometimes they aren't. Sometimes the covert ones, the more passive ones, they can really mess with your mind because you can't tell exactly what's going on. It's more about the gaslighting and trying to confuse you and trying to make you think you're going crazy and you did something wrong and making you think that you should be showing up in a better way. The covert abuser helps you come to the decision yourself that you're a bad person, where the overt abuser calls you a bad person directly. Now, these aren't necessarily two separate people. Sometimes it's the same person. Sometimes the same person can do both. You just have to be careful what they're throwing at you. And when you start to feel bad during a conversation or interaction, you have to figure out exactly what's happening, what is transpiring in this moment that's causing me to feel this way. And if you feel bad every time you're in a conversation with someone, it's possible that they are doing something, either overtly or covertly, that is causing you to feel this way. And when you can identify what's happening and even label what's happening, it's going to help you reach some clarity. It may not change what's happening, but it will help you get some clarity on what's going on so that you aren't stuck trying to figure out if you're doing something wrong. And this is why I'll throw some terms at you like this sometimes, like triangulation, isolation, smearing, and even like breadcrumbing is another one. When they feed you a little breadcrumb, this is especially when dating or when you've split up and the ex is still sending you texts every now and then saying how you're doing. Even if you just had a massive blowout, they'll throw you some little breadcrumb, some little message that says, hey, been thinking about you. Even though you are so angry at them, they just dismiss whatever happened and they just throw you a breadcrumb just to try to get you to follow those breadcrumbs back to them so they can get some want or need met. That's a term called breadcrumbing. But I throw you these terms just so you can understand what's happening. So when these things happen, you can determine if it's just maybe something that you're not seeing clearly, or is this an emotionally abusive behavior that you need to be aware of, and perhaps you can start to change how you respond to it. And when you have a choice in how to respond to an emotionally abusive behavior, you have some power. You become empowered to make choices, to make different decisions in how things end up. And these can be patterns that you have in your relationship. For example, when I was married, I would give my wife the silent treatment. Not proud of it. It was a terrible, terrible thing to do. I only realized it was emotionally abusive after I started learning what emotional abuse is and how it's defined and what behaviors are defined. And so many, many years ago, I discovered, amongst other behaviors, that the silent treatment can be emotionally abusive. I don't mean if somebody says something mean to you and you need to process it and be silent for a while. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the silent treatment with the intention to withhold love and make the other person feel bad to meet an agenda of some sort. For me, I was silent when I saw my wife do something I didn't like, and I wanted her to know I was angry, but in a very passive way, a very passive-aggressive way, actually. And by being silent and withholding love, she had no idea where I was, and I really believed that she felt bad enough that she would change her behavior. It was a dark manipulation, and I do not do that behavior anymore. It is cruel. I mean, when you do the behavior with the intention of wanting the other person to feel bad, to feel guilty, and also to make them feel unloved and unworthy of your time and attention, when the silent treatment has an agenda and all those components are present, the person on the other end goes through misery, especially if they really care about you and they really love you. They go through misery because they have no idea where you are. They think they might have done something wrong, but they can't figure it out. They have no idea if you're mad at them or if you're just sad and figuring something out on your own. And it's something that I did in my relationships in the past. And again, I don't do that anymore because I realize how harmful that is. And of course, once I learned it was emotionally abusive, I didn't want to do it anymore. And like I said, I realize how harmful that is now. And after learning what it does to the other person, it's just something that I won't accept in my relationship from either side. I won't accept it from me or from my girlfriend. Now, if my girlfriend gets mad at me and she needs some time to process some stuff, that's totally different. If there's something that I know she's upset about, that's different. But we will always end up bringing it out into the open and talking about it. But the reason I mentioned the silent treatment is because when you are experiencing silence from someone else in the context that I just talked about, where there seems to be an agenda, there seems to be something that they don't want to talk to you about, it's important to understand that that is a pattern that if you don't interrupt it, if you don't break the pattern, it will continue and it will be just as harmful as it always is, and it will not go away, because that is what I would consider a behavior that the person doing it believes works for their purpose. Again, I'm speaking from experience here. I used the silent treatment because I believed that I could get her to do something that I wanted her to do. And I was also upset. So there was a combination going on, and this is typically what happens. You might get the silent treatment or even do the silent treatment when you're upset at someone, but the secondary reason might be that you also want them to feel bad enough that they don't do it again, as if you're trying to tell them in a passive, silent way that what they did was wrong, and you want them to feel bad enough so that they'll stop doing it. This is what happens, is the person doing the silent treatment in this context, in this way, wants the other person to feel bad so that they'll change their behavior. That is a manipulation. That is emotional abuse, because it's not being talked about. It's just being coerced, or at least the behavior that they want to change. They are trying to coerce the person to change that behavior by being silent around them. And, silent treatment comes with other things, the facial expression, the body language. It's all part of it. And it often works with kind, compassionate, caring people. So this is some place to be careful. If you're a kind, compassionate, caring person and you get the silent treatment a lot, then you have to find a way to break that pattern. And one of those ways might be to just say, oh, it looks like you need time to yourself. I'll go take care of other things. Let me know when you're ready to come back. It might be something that simple. And the reason I might point you in that direction by saying, okay, I'll go take care of something else while you process or whatever you need to do, is because you're looking for their response and you're looking for a repetition of that behavior. In other words, if you don't react or respond to that silent treatment, what will they do then? If they're really depressed or they're really down on something and they need to process things, they're going to stay silent. They're going to do it again and again. They might need psychological help. Absolutely. I won't omit that from what I'm talking about today. They could need therapy, because if they're really down all the time and they just can't get past it, no matter what you do, they might need psychological help. But the reason I'm saying that if you are getting this all the time, they might have a secondary benefit to this, which is you giving them attention. It's that secondary gain I've talked about before. There are times when we do behaviors that has a secondary benefit, even if the primary result is miserable. Their primary result for doing the silent treatment is that they're miserable and they're trying to make you miserable, yet the secondary gain from that silent treatment is that you give them love and attention, you rub their back, you talk nicely to them, not that you weren't before, but it's more so when they're silent. You do extra favors for them. All of these things could be their secondary gain. And of course, in the vein I'm talking about the silent treatment now, they're trying to get you to change your behavior as well. All of that combined into that one behavior could be part of an ongoing pattern that might need to be broken. And the best way to break an ongoing pattern is to remove the secondary gain. And that's hard to do for compassionate people. It is very hard to do for people who actually care about the person. But if you don't do it, you may never find out if it was a manipulation. If it's a manipulation and you remove the secondary gain, they're not going to want to do it anymore because it won't work. If the person who is victim to the silent treatment doesn't feel bad, they don't change behavior, or they completely dismiss the silent treatment, or not even dismiss, but say, okay, it looks like you need to process some stuff. I'll leave you alone, and you just come to me when you're done processing or whatever you're going through. And then you walk away. If they realize that that doesn't work anymore, they might actually change that behavior. This works for any behavior. Anything that somebody else does that causes harm to the relationship, disrupts the relationship in some way, and seems to be something that makes one of you miserable or gives one of you more attention and more caring and more compassion, you just have to look for these secondary gains and make sure that the behavior is not being done for the purpose of that secondary gain. Because if it is, and in this case, the person doing the silent treatment is getting more attention, more love, more connection, you're giving them so much more adoration or compassion or whatever, but then you decide to treat it as if they need to go through something and they need time on their own. What do they do then? Do they do the silent treatment again? Or do they stop doing it altogether? It's just something to think about. When somebody does behavior, it usually has, or almost always, has some sort of gain. Even if that behavior seems self-deprecating or hurtful to themselves or miserable to themselves, or if they're depressed or sad or crying, if they're in that space and they're getting benefits from being in that space, how do they respond when they don't get the benefits? This is sort of a gray area because, the victims of emotional abuse can be in this space too. But remember the components that I talked about. If there's the idea that they want you to change, and you may not know that they want you to change, they may not be verbal about it, they may not be obvious about it, but this is why you start analyzing the behaviors that you see in your relationships. You analyze these behaviors and ask yourself, is there a secondary gain to what they're doing? Are they benefiting from this in some way? I mean, they seem unhappy, they seem very depressed, but are they benefiting from it in some way? It's just good to ask yourself these questions so that you stay on top of this stuff. Because if you've been involved in an emotionally harmful situation for a long time, then these things are really ingrained in the relationship and they just don't stop. They will not stop unless somebody takes a stand and changes something. And that might mean changing the response to the behavior that you're witnessing. And then you'll see what happens when you change the response. And that's a good way to do it. So I started talking about how relationships shouldn't have these battles. We shouldn't have all these conflicts. There should be no reason that we go into a relationship and it's so damn difficult. Should be no reason. Relationships are supposed to be about enjoying life together, experiencing things together, sharing things and laughing together. And yes, crying together and moving through the challenges together. And yes, even fighting and arguing. It's all part of the relationship experience because we're all different people with different ideas and different histories. We all have our own perception, our own values. We are very dynamic individuals that when we come together and we're in the same room and we occupy the same space or the same house or the same area of some sort in the same workplace, our personalities are either going to be complementary, colliding, or both. When it's both, sometimes you have synergy. Sometimes you get along great, and then sometimes you argue, but you always even it out in the middle. And then sometimes you meet people where there's not much arguing. And this is good too. You're both probably open-minded. You're both probably receptive to the other person's point of view. That's even better. But when you get into a relationship and it's mostly conflict and mostly feeling bad and mostly getting into arguments or mostly defending yourself or mostly negative in many ways, you're no longer relating. You can't fit that round peg into that square hole. You can't do it. And it usually starts with one person who either has a closed mind or wants the entire relationship to be made up of a single set of values instead of both. Or both people can feel this way. They can both feel like their values don't match the other person's values, but they're trying to make the relationship that one set of values, and it just doesn't work. And then sometimes there are controllers. There are people that want to control the other person. There are people that want to control the direction of the relationship. They want to manage everything that comes along so that they have control over where you live, how you dress, how much money you spend on things. These are all part of not really relating anymore. They're more like the power over model I was talking about earlier. When one person wants power over you and they want to take control of where the relationship goes and how you both show up, that's when you're in a situation that you probably need to question. You probably need to talk about, because both of you should have power. Both of you should be able to interact and share ideas and agree and disagree and still get along at the end of the day. Unless the values are so far apart that you both can't agree no matter what you do, then you may have to either accept that you agree to disagree, or you disagree to the point where you can't be around one another. And that can happen too. You might disagree on values so much where you can't be around each other. And that can happen. And when it does, it's just something you have to face and either talk about and say, look, we can't come to an agreement here. And I think it's important that we acknowledge this. I think it's important that we acknowledge that this issue will always be an issue for us. And because of that, maybe this isn't going to work. That might be a hard conversation to have, but at least it would be on the table. And when it's on the table, it's in your face. The data's there. The facts are right there. And this is it. This is sort of like, it's do or die now. It's all or nothing. And when you're facing that decision, sometimes the mind changes. Sometimes people will have second thoughts. Sometimes the mind opens and there will be considerations that weren't considered before. I mean, I remember the first time I said, if I have a problem with my wife's behavior, then I should leave. I remember saying that to myself. This is shortly after we separated, but we were still married. We still wanted to work things out. And I was working on my judgment issues. And then when she left and we were separated for a while, all with the intention of getting back together, I remember asking myself, what if what you want her to do, she never does, and she never changes, and this is how she'll be for the rest of her life? If everything that you judge her about never changes, will you be okay with that? And my answer was no. So the data was on the table. I was putting it out there for me to face directly and really get an understanding of where I stood. And where I stood was no, if she never changes, then I won't be able to handle it. The next question that came to mind was, well, what are you going to do then? Are you going to continue to badger her and judge her and make her life miserable? Or are you going to leave? Because if you don't like it, that's your problem. So you should leave. This is me talking to myself. And I thought about this for a moment. And I said, but I don't want to leave. And then suddenly the dilemma was there that if I stay, then I have to accept that she'll never change. And if I leave, I have to accept that I'm going to lose my marriage. This was me facing the music. It was, again, on the table. It had to be decided. This is what I'm talking about, is you throw it on the table and say, look, this is what we're dealing with. What are we going to do about it? And this is what I did. I put it on the table. I didn't really discuss this with her. I just did this in my own head. And I told myself, well, if I don't like her behavior, then I need to leave. I need to honor myself and leave. And as I said earlier, your mind tends to do different things when you're faced with an ultimatum like this. And that's exactly what my mind did. I finally faced an ultimatum. Well, I'm either going to stay and accept it or leave because I can't accept it. That was my ultimatum. And when I said, well, I'm just going to have to leave then because that's what I want. I know I don't want her to be this way for the rest of our lives, so I should leave. And when I said that, suddenly this shift happened in my mind and I realized, what am I doing? I'm going to just end this relationship because I can't accept her behavior? Is that what I really want? And that's when my mind finally opened and finally became more accepting and less judgmental, and I realized that all of my behavior was based on the idea that she had to change, but not that I had to leave if I didn't like it. I never introduced that choice, that if I didn't like it, I had to leave. But when I finally did it, when I finally introduced that choice, it became clear to me that I had very limited thinking, very black and white thinking, and a very closed mind. And it just burst open. In that moment, it burst open. And it made me realize that I wasn't being accepting, that I was being so harsh and hurtful. I finally developed an empathy that I didn't have. I mean, I was empathetic before, but to the level where my behavior was hurting her, and I put myself in her shoes and realized, oh, that's how she feels. And I also realized that if I left, I'd be giving up my marriage and throwing away this investment of my time and energy. All of that came to a head when I presented myself with that ultimatum. And that's when my mind shifted, and I decided to take the path of accepting my wife the way she was, the way she is. And if I didn't like it, that was my problem, and just to allow her to be herself. And that freed me. It freed both of us. It freed the relationship to continue down the path without any further emotional abuse from me. I was still working on things. I was still trying to figure things out. But in that moment, that ultimatum moment, when you give yourself that ultimatum, your mind opens because you have to make the choice. You force yourself to have to make a choice. And that was the day I stopped judging my partners. I mean, my marriage did not last for other reasons. She had already fallen out of love with me. And when she saw the changes in me, she loved them. She had no idea who I was anymore, but the love was gone and the disconnect was there. And I totally understood that too. And it hurt, but it was the path that she needed to take. And I needed to take too, because I still had a lot of healing to do. And it was probably better that we weren't together when I did that healing, because then I had all that time to myself and I had no choice but to focus on myself. And that was very helpful. And so it was a painful time, but I bring that up because the ultimatum, the decision that you make based on the final thing that you may need to do, or maybe you should do, when you're faced with that decision for real, sometimes your mind shifts and changes what you've been thinking the whole time. Because what you've been thinking the whole time, you never want to think of the hard stuff, especially when you have a closed mind about it. Like, I will never consider that. But when you're faced with an ultimatum where you either have to consider that or else, then you start thinking a little differently. So I don't know if that helps you in a situation you're in, or maybe it does. And if it does, that's great, because although it's hard, it's important. I think it's important to come up with these ultimatums in your head and really consider what choices you have and make those choices real in your head, so that when you consider them, your mind might actually open a little more than it was. Your mind may actually open a little bit farther than it was. Maybe you can apply that somewhere in your life. Thanks for tuning in today. There's so much more to talk about on this subject and many more. Stay tuned for more episodes coming up really soon. Again, thanks for joining me, and share this with others that might benefit. Love and Abuse is the official podcast of the Mean Workbook, an assessment and healing guide for difficult relationships. The workbook provides an evaluation of your relationship based on a 200-point assessment and is geared toward romantic relationships, but many have used it for family and others in their life to find out if they're being manipulative or emotionally abusive as well. If you're in a difficult relationship and you would like to pinpoint the unhealthy behaviors causing you to leave so many interactions feeling bad, let the workbook help you discover the specific components of bad behavior and put into words what you're experiencing. Get the tools you need to help you reach clarity. Visit loveandabuse.com for more information. This show exists to remind you that you are not alone and you're not going crazy. You deserve to be treated with respect and kindness. You deserve honesty and sincerity. You deserve to be treated as worthy and significant, because you are. Thank you for joining me today. We'll talk again soon.